Hey up, Rayvers. We've got a ripping yarn adventure story for you today, bit of boys' own stuff, if you will, with two great actors, two of my personal favourites, Sean Connery, Michael Caine, in The Man Who Would Be King. Yes, set at the height of the British Empire, this. Must admit I'm not too hot up on my history and precise timelines, but I'd be guessing this is peak pillaging time, you know, when we're robbing countries of the natural resources for the financial betterment of Great Britain. Anyway, the story kicks off with a very difficult to recognise Christopher Plummer as Rudyard Kipling, beavering away in his office. I really didn't recognise him first time I saw it. Amazing what a tash and a pair of spectacles does, isn't it? He was properly disguised. Didn't know it was him first time I saw it. And then, and even harder to recognise, Michael Caine swans in. Or hobbles in, more accurately. And evidently these two fellas know each other. There's some history there. And we flash back to when they first meet. And Caine's character is called Peachy Carnahan. And he's obviously a thieving bleeder, because he picks Kipling's pocket, only to discover he's nicked Mr. Kipling's exceedingly good pendant, which carries the insignia of a Freemason. And Carnahan, he's obviously a Freemason and all, because instantly he feels bloody awful about it and he has to try and return the pendant. Now, I'll be honest with you, my knowledge of Freemasonry, pretty limited. To programmes like Bergerac and Inspector Morse, where you've got all these posh blokes doing weird initiations, you know, like David Cameron and the Pig. Well, maybe not like that, but you get my drift. I was calling the Tickly Handshake Gang.
That's different, sir.
You know, under the impression that they do weird handshakes with each other and roll the trouser legs up to communicate that they're a Mason to one another. And this is a bit like that, I know, because Peachy starts talking absolute shit to Rudyard Kipling.
Supposing I was to ask you, as a stranger going to the West to seek for that which was lost, what would you say then?
I should answer, where do you come from?
But it's obviously some sort of code, because they know what the other one means, don't they? And this Freemasonry lark is pretty integral to the plot, as we'll come to later. But yeah, being a Mason seems to get you loads of free stuff and loads of preferential treatment. I expect loads of Tory MPs are Masons, ain't there? And Carnahan is able to get Kipling to do him a favour and pass a message on to Daniel Dravert, played by Sean Connery. Sporting a majestic pair of mutton chop sideburns there, ain't he? Super stuff. And Carnahan and Dravert visit Kipling's office to tell him of their plan to become kings of Kafiristan.
We'll say to any chief we can find, do you want to vanquish your foes? Of course you'll say, go to it. We'll fight for him, make him king, then we'll subvert that king. We'll seize his royal throne and loot the country 4 ways from Sunday.
Now, arguably, that is a morally reprehensible plan. Not too dissimilar from the attitude of the British Empire as a whole, to be honest with you. But Connery and Caine, the characters, are so likeable that you just have to go with it. And the next time we see them, they're in disguise because they're trying to make their way over to Kafiristan. And they bid farewell to Mr. Kipling, who wishes them luck. And he gifts Connery with the exceedingly good pendant with the Freemasonry insignia on it. Now, as they're making their way to Kafiristan, we get to spend a little bit of time with them, get to know them. And we get to see Sean Connery doing a little bit of dancing. A very good mover, isn't he, Sean Connery? And a little bit of singing. Got a lovely voice, ain't he?
His blood-red banner streams afar, who follows in his train.
Thankfully, we don't get to see Michael Caine dancing. Or singing.
It breaks your heart in two.
Bloody hellfire. Now, at one point, it looks like they're goners because they're stuck freezing their nuts off on this mountain and can't get across this chasm. But what's interesting is that faced with the prospect of their certain death, they're actually pretty relaxed about it, you know, resigned to their fate. Almost, you know, like, yeah, we've had a good run. If this is it, this is it. Very British stiff upper lip. So they decide to reminisce about some good times and end up having such a good laugh that they cause an avalanche which fills up the chasm and allows them to get to Kafiristan.
Danny, we could get on.
Now, something that becomes apparent is that while superficially they're equals, Peachy has got the brains. He's a clever one. And Dravert, he ain't that bright.
Problem is, how to divide 5 Afghans from 3 mules and have 2 Englishmen left over.
Shoot them out the saddles.
No, the mules will bolt.
Yeah, he's obviously great company, and you can see why the two of them get on. But Peachy is definitely the brains of the operation. And it's all very subtle. It ain't laid on with a trowel. It's brilliant acting from Caine and Connery, that's what it is. On the road, they arrive at Kafiristan, and they immediately endear themselves to the local tribe by killing a load of folk from a rival tribe who'd been attacking them. And very conveniently, they happened to bump into a Gurkha soldier, Billy Fish, played by Saeed Jaffrey. I think he was husband of Madhur Jaffrey. Do you remember Madhur Jaffrey? Oh, yes, indeed. Did some great stuff. Denise has still got some Madhur Jaffrey cookery books, I'm sure of it. Anyway, yeah, very convenient that this Gurkha's there because he can translate for them. So God knows how they're planning on communicating if they hadn't bumped into him. Very fortunate, that. So they train the men of the village to become warriors so that they can go into battle and duff up the buggers from the rival village up the road. And it looks like Peach is taking care of the infantry side of things and Danny is looking after cavalry. But he gets a rush of blood and gets shot with an arrow. And you're thinking, oh God, no, Sean Connery's dead. But it doesn't seem to affect him and he keeps on fighting. And the rival villagers just give up and bow down to him because he can't be defeated. And because he didn't bleed when he got hit by the arrow, the tribesfolk believe that Danny is a god. And they start calling him Sikander, Sikander, after Alexander the Great, who was there centuries before. And they thought he were a god, apparently. So whilst we know he ain't a god,
The arrow's stuck in the bandolier. There was no miracle, Billy.
Peachy, demonstrating some more cunning, reckons they should play along.
Supposing you was an ignorant Kafiri, who would you rather follow, a god or a man?
And pretend that Danny's a god in order to get more tribes following him and so that they can become rulers of the entire country. And this plan seems to be working until they get summoned to the holy city by some high priest head honcho bloke. And evidently these priests are a bit knocked off that this god has suddenly turned up and has started taking over their country. So they obviously want to prove he's mere mortal by making him bleed. But just as they're about to kill him, they notice Mr. Kipling's exceedingly good pendant with the Freemasonry insignia on it. And by a striking bit of good luck, it turns out that the Freemasonry insignia is the same insignia that were used by Alexander the Great, Sikander, confirming to the priest that Sean Connery is in fact a god. And we get a coronation where we get to see Sean Connery's buttocks. Can't see King Charles doing that. Did get me thinking though, how many other James Bond's buttocks have we seen? I've definitely seen Pierce Brosnan's buttocks. The Thomas Crown affair, saw his buttocks then. Have we seen any other Bond's buttocks? I bet Daniel Craig's got his buttocks out, ain't it? I bet him and Dalton, they're Shakespeare actors, ain't they? Stage actors. And I bet they're always getting the kit off them sorts. Roger Moore, doubt it. Don't think we've seen his buttocks, have we? Can't remember it if we have. Hey, if you've seen Roger Moore's buttocks, get in touch. Now we see some more fantastic acting from Connery and Caine, as Danny really starts to relish the role of being god and ruler of Kafiristan. But he suffers from an attack of hubris and starts to get a nickel big for his boots.
If we're going to make it stick that I'm a god, you ought to bow when you pass in front of me like everybody else.
Almost believing the hype that he is a god and it were fate that brought him here. And when the summer comes and Peachy says, great, we can get out of here now and go home with all this money, Danny says,
I ain't going, Peachy.
And it's his duty and destiny to be ruler of Kafiristan.
Ha ha! Pardon me while I fall down laughing.
And these two friends who are thick as thieves, they fall out, which is very distressing.
You have our permission to bugger off.
Now, Danny decides he wants to get married, and this does not go down well with the high priests. It ain't appropriate for a god to marry a mortal woman. And just as Peach is about to bugger off to England, a rich man, him and Danny sort of make up. Danny persuades him to just hang on a bit to see him get married. But unfortunately, it all goes tits up, doesn't it? Because it looks like the priests have drugged Connor's bride-to-be. And she bites him, causing him to bleed.
Danny's bleeding, they know! He says not God, not devil, but man!
And again we see Peachy and Danny demonstrating a stiff upper lip here, as the realisation dawns on the Kafiris as to the fact that they've duped him, and Danny weren't a god after all.
Danny, brass it out!
And instead of the heroes managing to go back to Blighty as rich men, one could argue that they get the just desserts, a bit of karma, as a horde of livid Kafiris chase after them to try and exact revenge for getting duped. And it's heartbreaking, because even though what they've done is morally reprehensible, you still want Peachy and Danny to get away with it, because they're such lovable rogues. And when you see their ill-gotten gains rolling away down the hill, you know the game's up. Even more so when you see Billy Fish sacrificing his son and dying a soldier's death. And that's really sad, because he's a great character and all. Saeed Jaffrey's brilliant in that part, he's superb. But thankfully, Danny realises he's been a pillock, and he apologises to Peachy, and everything's right with the world.
Can you forgive me?
That I can. And that I do, Danny.
But the Kafiris make Danny walk the plank. Well, that rope bridge. But again, faced with certain death. They're holding their heads high, you know, stiff upper lip and all that. You know, they ain't going out with a whimper, they're going to stare death in the face. And Danny, defiant to the last, decides to belt out his favourite song.
A glorious band, the chosen few on...
What courage. Unlike Sean Connery, who apparently when he had to film this scene on the rope bridge, were absolutely shitting his son. Okeydoo, on to race ratings, and, well, Michael Caine, Sean Connery. Very difficult not to get my hopes up going into a film like this. Two of my favourite actors in a ripping yarn, a ripping adventure story. So I could not be excited about watching it. So I were expecting and I were hoping for a 5-star film. And I have to say, absolutely loved it. I think it's Caine and Connery's best ever performances. And let's be honest, you got a lot to go at with them pair. Now, obviously, we can question the morals and the ethics behind the motivations of the characters and how the natives of Kafiristan are portrayed. But to me, you have to watch that through the lens of the British Empire at the time and its attitude to the rest of the world. You know, we thought we were the dog's bollocks, didn't we? And didn't realise what we were doing were morally reprehensible. Although I suspect that the folk who were in charge did know that it were morally reprehensible and didn't give a shit and did it anyway. But one of my all-time favourite films, absolutely bloody loved it. And for the first time ever in Ray Review's history, a film hits the maximum. A 5-star film. Do, yeah. Now, the stiff upper lip stuff and the staring death in the face, all that malarkey, is all well and good. But part of me thinks, yeah, could they just survive that one as well? Could they have escaped? Indiana Jones, he just tangled his foot up amongst the ropes on the rope bridge, and that were enough for him to survive. Couldn't Connery have done that? Because then we'd have avoided this incredibly harrowing ending.
Who followed?
Michael Caine singing. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's review, Rayvers, and remember to poke the like button if you did, and share Ray Reviews with your mates, yeah, and subscribe to my channel if you ain't already a subscriber. And I will be back very soon with another review, and in the meantime, I'm now going to pop to Curry's and try a tickly handshake to see if I can get a cheap telly. Anyway, I'll see you a lot next time. Okeydoo!